Well, thank you so much for joining me. Hi, guys. It's your girl, Trae Holiday, with another episode of Community Corner right here at Black Dot Studios. And so excited. Nope, I'm going to start it over because I don't want to say Black Dot Studios. Okay. Hi, you guys. It's your girl, Trae Holiday, here with another episode of Community Corner. I have an amazing guest today with us, Miss Cynthia Brothers. She is iconic right now. Let me tell you, Vanishing Seattle and this idea, this movement, I want to call it, that you and others have really launched has been phenomenal to just shed light on spaces that are closing. So if you guys don't know about Vanishing Seattle, she will let you know where to check them out and where to find out all of the great content that they are giving to the community. And it's really I think it's a space that you guys have created to shed light on it. So let's get right into it. Like, why did you create that? What is it? Tell the people what it is.
Yeah, well, thanks, Trae, for that super generous introduction and for having me here. I've been really jazzed about this the whole week.
Absolutely.
But yeah, just in terms of how Vanishing Seattle started, it began as a social media account. It's still primarily on Instagram and Facebook. And I started it in January 2016.
Wow.
And it was just kind of on a whim. Like, I didn't really have this like grand plan in mind or anything. I just, just had this almost like personal need to document all the changes and all the places that were disappearing around me at what seemed like a really rapid, accelerated rate. And so the place that kind of, I guess, pushed me over the edge to make my first post was a Filipino restaurant in Beacon Hill called Inay's. And one of my friends, Atasha Manila, is a drag performer who worked there and would also do this really incredible, like, one-woman drag show every Friday. And, it's in North Beacon Hill. That area's been gentrifying. And so the rent was raised and the owner decided he had to close. So I was just there on the very last night, which also happened to be a Friday, and Natasha was doing her last performance there. And yeah, it was beautiful. She did a performance to Effie's song from Dreamgirls.
Oh, there
I'm telling
we go.
you, I'm not going.
Yes.
Yeah. And it was just a really, powerful defiance moment and space where you had this, intersection of the Beacon Hill community and the queer community and the Asian American and Filipinx community. And it was like one of these places that, to me, is very uniquely Seattle.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just, took some video of it, created the account, put that on as my very first post because I just wanted to, capture the magic of that space and also kind of show people that this is the type of like magic and dynamism and community that is at risk of being lost when we, push out spaces like Inay's. So that's kind of how it all started.
Wow. And now, geez. So you guys, you basically just finished. This is now going into year 4 for you guys.
Yeah.
Wow. And so in that time frame, I know you guys have captured a lot of spaces closing. Do you have an idea of how many spaces you've had to cover?
It's tough to estimate. I mean, I think since I've started, I've managed to do at least a post a day.
Wow.
And some days it's like 2 or 3. They're not all about a different vanishing place. For example, on Saturdays, I'll try to highlight places that are still here, do like a small business Saturday to be like, oh, these are places where you can put your money. These are places that you can support and support the local ecosystem. Or I might do like Throwback Thursdays where it'll be about something that's a little bit more throwback or vintage or something about Seattle history. But I mean, basically I've done, I don't know how many, over 1,300 posts,
Wow.
I guess. But I know that I'm just scratching the surface because for every post that I'm able to do, I have like a huge backlog. And then there's stuff that I don't know about or wasn't able to cover. So it's, I would probably estimate there's probably been hundreds of places that have, that I've been able to document just in the past 4 years. So it's a lot. Yeah.
That is a lot of work. And I, in my mind, And I think it's because now Vanishing Seattle has just grown, exponentially. I think, like you said, you weren't even thinking about, how to grow it. You just wanted to capture it. And you knew that it was important to community members, right? And so it because you're a community member, it was important to you. But I have been so amazed at just the growth of Vanishing Seattle and how many people now understand and know about the platform. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you and the work that you've put in to get it to that place.
Yeah, I mean, I did not anticipate that it would kind of grow in the way that it has. I think at this point across Instagram and Facebook, I've got about 50,000 followers.
Wow.
And it's also given me the opportunity to just, it's taken me to some really like cool places and collaborations and relationships with people. I mean, for me, that's like what really keeps me going is being able to have these connections and forge relationships like in the real world and offline in addition to online.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it can be tough. It can be a lot of labor just to, basically it's just me like doing the posting on social media, but, being able to have events or meet folks or, connect with folks like you who are doing really awesome, innovative work in the community is really great.
Yeah.
And I think I just kind of, also just have this obsession to keep plugging away at it and posting and taking pictures and researching, writing captions. And, and a lot of it, I also get to share contents and pictures and stories that others share with me, which is great as well, because I think it's important to, include the perspectives and experiences and resources of other folks. So it's not just, me and what I see and what I think and experience.
Right.
And it helps become more like a collective kind of storytelling and story sharing that is much bigger than like what I could do just as an individual.
Yeah. And that's why that really leads into my next question. Well, you answered it already by saying it was mainly just you doing the post, because in my mind, I'm like, there's got to be a team doing this. I mean, you're covering so many different things that I was really like, she must have expanded to like this, cohort of folks that are just like, like that are, hey, we are here, but I think that you just described it. The best way to do this work, and when we talk about community, this is why I love Community Corner, because I can't have a show without these kinds of people and these experiences, right? So it's the constant collaboration that allows for anything to expand. And I think that you just hit the nail on the head with that when you were saying, accepting stories and stuff from other folks and being able to highlight spaces that they know are closing in their neighborhoods, right? And to me, just being able to have a platform for that is huge, because I think about how people dealt with this beforehand, and it was so individualized. So I want to move into how this and experiencing this platform on such a kind of wide base of social media and getting all of the comments and that interaction and engagement with the content. How do you feel that has maybe either helped or hurt what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy the interactive piece of it. I mean, there's a typical stuff like reading the comments, responding to them, responding to messages, stuff like that. There's only like so much that I can handle of that, just capacity wise. I mean, usually I'll try to kind of, get a handle on that on Instagram. It also gives me a good beat for just kind of like how people are feeling about this. What's kind of the, dominant like messages or narratives, or just like how people are reacting or how stuff is resonating with them. Facebook is like a whole nother game. I just have to like, post stuff and then just like leave it, because I just like don't have it in me or don't have the capacity to deal with all that. But I mean, I think again, it's like it leads to some great relationships and interactions and conversations. I mean, I think I'd like it to be a space where people can kind of have those conversations, and you will see that happen. People would be like, oh, I used to like work here coming up, and people would be like, I did too, or wait, we both worked here, la la, like that stuff is cool. And then also again being able to forge those kind of conversations and relationships in real life by having events, and in a lot of ways it still is a town, like, so it's really cool to see that people, know each other, or able to, make those connections. And also just, like you said, just feel like they're not alone. Like I think a lot of people, they get on a very kind of instinctual level or through experience, like kind of the injustice and the tragedy of a lot of this, and what we're losing, but also kind of like the other side of it is that it's a love letter and a celebration about the places and the people and the communities that make the city great. And aren't those the type of like, what are we doing to ensure that we nurture that and that we support each other? So again, it's kind of like, at the end of the day, it really is about the people and kind of, I guess building that collective narrative and hopefully inspiring people to, learn the history of these places and these communities, to care and to give a shit. Yeah. And then be, hopefully motivated to take some action and to stay engaged, to try and make some change towards what kind of city we want to be. Because I don't want to just make people feel bummed out or feel sad. That's not my intention, although that does happen. And I think that's part of kind of what can, that anger, that sense of loss is very real. But hopefully that can also, again, be kind of a motivation, I would say, towards creating the type of change that people would like to see.
I agree with you so much because, that's, for me, especially working with, Africatown Community Land Trust and focusing on the solutions, right? And being so solution oriented all the time. I feel that that's what I love about what you're doing is there has to be a two-pronged effort to a certain degree. Because you have to do this exposure piece. And then you have to do this, okay, what are we doing about it, right? Because alone, one without the other doesn't really have the same bite to it, right? It doesn't have that, it doesn't provide the same opportunity. But when you're able to do this combination effect and understand, okay, that space is closing, what can we do about it right now? Because I also feel like too, though, sometimes we suffer when we don't know soon enough, right? When it's like that property owner, that business owner, that family, whatever it is, if it's a space or a residence, we hear about it when it's, inevitable. And so I want to hear from you if there was ever a time where you felt like your efforts saved a space.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like kind of what I've been able to do in Vanishing Seattle through the social media part, like I am, trying to figure out how can I be better about that solutions part, or like, okay, like, so what, like, what can we do? And I think people are hungry for that. Sometimes I think just having like an Instagram account, it's got like a little bit of limitations around that, especially when it's like, it's just every day. It's like there's something new that's vanishing, and I'm sure that can feel overwhelming. Where I feel like I do have the ability and try to help, because I don't have all the solutions or answers, nor should I. I mean, I'm still learning every day about this and learning from folks in the community that are doing organizing and advocacy and, coming up with really creative solutions. When there is something that is like a community or a grassroots effort to try and save something, whatever that might be. So like with Flowers Just for You, like you all did that awesome video and that article around the eviction, and pointed people towards a GoFundMe and other ways, like skills to help the small business. If there's a role I can play in helping to amplify that, or say there's a petition or something, or a way that I can sign on maybe to help with the media effort, or just be helpful to like what other organizations are doing to advance the solutions that they identify, then if I can be helpful in getting the word out, helping to direct some money over there or get more signatures or whatever it might be. I think I just want to be helpful in the role that I have with Vanishing Seattle, because I think a lot of kind of the incessant showing of places that are leaving is, I mean, a lot of people still don't realize that there's a problem, that there's something wrong. And so it's kind of like raising these questions about like, well, what do we mean about when we talk about progress and who's included in that and who's left out. So I guess just, kind of raising the questions, poking holes in people's assumptions, getting people to have those conversations. And then I'm in some other organizing spaces where we're able to do more. I think that's solution oriented. And I think that's just kind of hopefully part of the trajectory of Vanishing Seattle is, are there ways that the work can change or things that can evolve? So, I just can be more supportive towards, what do we do about it? How do we create a better, a better future for, the city and its communities?
Well, I already think that your platform has done that to a certain degree. I mean, I know there was a space, it was an apartment building, I think on Broadway or up in Capitol Hill area. And the residents got on board. I mean, I don't know if it was amplified through the posting of Vanishing Seattle, but it was inspiring for me to see, because one of my friends lived in the building. And so she just so happened to send it to me. And she's like, did you see, this is going on? Cool. And I just remember coming across that Vanishing had also kind of covered this. And, I just love when the people power shows up, shows out. Because to me, that is one of the biggest assets we have as community, as community-based people and organizations. It is this idea that there are thousands of people in this community who see it as well as we do. And maybe they don't see it the same, but they see it. They see the changes. They see, businesses closing. They see families moving out, other families moving in. So they just see the wave. And whether they're affected by it is a personal choice or a personal thing, right? However, just being there and witnessing it, now you could be a proponent of it. You could say, this is exactly what needs to happen here. It's fine. But at the base level, everybody sees it, right? So I think that's why I love this exposure piece. I love what you've done with the platform. I think it's so the growth of how many followers you have is indicative of how hungry people are for this information. So I don't know if anybody else was covering it the way that you have.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good artists and creatives and groups that I'm not the only one doing this type of work,
right?
Like maybe and it takes different forms. Like there's a lot of great like Ghosts of Seattle Past did a great anthology with interviews and arts and like shelf life stories, did the the verbal histories and the oral history. So it takes a lot of different forms. And there's even a book I found out later called Vanishing Seattle that was I think published in the mid 2000s. Wow. I think there's been versions of Vanishing like San Francisco and New York. So it's like, I mean, I think that there are a lot of people who are contributing and doing, work in different really amazing creative ways that I owe a lot to. And just want to like acknowledge that. But I mean, the documentation piece is interesting because it's like with a lot of my posts, I don't necessarily, it varies, but like with a lot of the posts, I won't put my own commentary or my own spin on it. I'm just kind of like, this is what's here and this is the information I found on what's coming. And I just kind of leave it there and people can come to their own kind of conclusions or have their own comments or conversations about it. But for me, it's like, especially because so much of the change is just physical, like it's here one day and it's gone the next. And when you document something, like you said, it's like you can't say that it didn't exist. And it's almost like a way of being like I see you, we see you, we see this space, it meant something to someone. And you cannot like deny that it existed or that, it had meaning. Because a lot of these places, it's like, I don't really know if anyone's going to be taking a picture of this, old house or this like business that's about to disappear or whatever. So I think part of that is, kind of feeds into my motivation or my obsession.
That's awesome. I mean, because to me, I think it takes a lot of passion to do what you're doing and to do this work. I know for me, I was saying earlier, there's so many similarities between what Vanishing Seattle is doing in terms of like that exposure piece and then what Africatown Community Land Trust is doing in terms of like, okay, the solution piece, right? So I think as we continue to, develop these kind of connections, there's a lot of stuff that we can really cover because, again, like you said, you've been able to do a post at least once a day, right? And even if it wasn't about a particular space closing, you've been able to capture hundreds of spaces in the last 3 years that are closing. And that to me is paramount as we talk about educating the community on these things. Because I think a lot of times too, folks don't realize until it is actually shut down. And that's what I was saying earlier, just in terms of like, sometimes we learn about it just so late. It is literally when it's missing from our neighborhood, when it's gone. And so there's a couple of things that I want to touch on here too, because I think it's important to note that Reverend Harriet Walden will be doing a workshop on MLK Day at Garfield called Architectural Trauma. And there's a colon there, and it has another half of the name that I'm blanking on. But when I heard the term architectural trauma, I just thought, man, who would have thought about that, maybe 20 years ago, 30 years ago? Because I think it was not as abrupt. And I think that that's what we are experiencing is this abruptness of the closures and the change in transition, which you just spoke to, right? Like one day it's there and then it's gone the next. And so, documenting that is too important to not be doing. Like we all need to be documenting. So we talk about it on the land trust side in terms of, okay, how can we make sure that the culture that was once there is brought back, right? Which is a lot harder than just building the space and building the building. Because, once you have the building up, now what, right? So we're always thinking about the multiple facets that are taken away, that are ripped out of a neighborhood. Just like you said, from your first, the first one you captured, and Inez, right? You were there and you got to see this performer, and that performer would come every week, and you got to experience that, and that is also a loss. And sometimes people just think about like, oh, well, they had such good food or whatever. But I think about the spaces where you could bump into, someone you went to high school with and be able to have a 30-minute conversation because you haven't seen them in so many years, right? And it's just being intentional about creating spaces like that. So I'm just thrilled that you're on here, because I think as we're having this discussion, I'm thinking about all the other ways that we can collaborate. And one of them, you have an event coming up, right? So let's hear about this event. It's going to be at Wa Na Wari, correct? Okay. So I love that space too, because that's a transformative space. And Inye and his family have done an amazing job just trying to save that family home and think very progressively and be different, be innovative about how they're going to utilize that space. So tell us a little bit more about this event you have coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So on January 16th at Wa Na Wari House, we're having the official launch event for Vanishing Seattle film series. So the film series has been, and shout out to my co-producer Martin Tran, who approached me with this idea originally to kind of take a deeper dive into the stories behind the Vanishing Seattle hashtag by having a short film series. So we're going to have about half a dozen, and we're launching it. The first one, we're kind of taking an approach of looking at different neighborhoods in the city, and then what's like a small business or gathering space or like a community institution within that. And obviously, like, Vanishing Seattle does not capture the whole thing because, there's a larger, backdrop of, the redlining and then the gentrification displacement in the CD, but also the creative, like, resilient response to that. That, Black folks are still here and still creating art and building community. Yeah. So, we thought Wa Na Wari was a perfect, showcase of that happening, because we didn't want to be like, oh, we're going to reinforce this thing that, like, the CD is vanishing. Right. It's gone. Right. Like, this is like the other side of it. Like, this is what happens when you have, just community-based responses to it. And the Wa Na Wari crew has been really incredible, partnering with us in this event and, allowing us to come into the space. The filmmakers for that are Devin Delania and Kamara Bailey, who are super incredible. So yeah, we're going to have the screening of the short film, and then appropriately have some art and performances too.
Absolutely.
So Yedem Sek, who also has lent his music for the film, is going to perform, and the poet Ebo Barton. We're going to have food and
spaces for our culture
kids,
to thrive.
Friends.
So thank you for
just really excited to kick
tuning
off
in
with
today.
that. And then the idea is to release another short film about every month or every other month or so, and most of them are going to be paired with similar events that are in partnership or co-created with, or kind of based in community that it's focused on. So yeah, January 16th, which is a Thursday from 7 to 9.
I love this idea, and I think that's, to me, is just speaks to the resilience of this movement, right? Because I love what you said earlier when you said you didn't just want to be, posting about this and kind of having that kind of demure attitude about like, oh man, another space, because that is hard. That's taxing on the emotions, right?
Yeah.
But to be doing events like this and partnering with the right institutions, and even doing the films themselves that are showcasing these spaces, and to me, that's really what it's about. And it's taking what's going on into a different format where you can really, again, begin to continue to educate the community, uplift the community, create opportunities for community to stay engaged, right, with the content, which I think is so important. I also think too that, gentrification might be a hot button issue right now, but it's something that really affects people's daily lives. And so the spotlight that it's being given right now is good for folks like us, because we're in this work. We're doing this work. But then there's also this important piece that you mentioned about documentation. So I love that they're doing these films, because that to me is how you keep it alive. I think that's why content is so important as we move forward. So I'm so thankful that you guys are doing this film series.
No, thanks you. Yeah, I'm also just, a huge fan of all the work that Africatown is doing around media, and just, the community driven development and the equitable development. It's just I think we definitely need more of it. It's super inspiring. As I mentioned, some of the organizing spaces that I'm in, the international district, like we definitely have a lot that we can learn from you all, and just a lot of, I think, exciting, collaboration and solidarity around, community control and like sovereignty over, our neighborhoods and the shared history of redlining.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's like, if there's, any place that I think can resist and come up with resilient solutions, and just have like the brilliance to come out the other side, transformed and more whole. I feel like Seattle is the place.
Yes.
It's like I think we have this history of incredible multiracial, cross-class organizing, this kind of like subversive countercultural history.
Yeah.
I mean, and we also have, and it's been responding to this other history, like what's happening now is not new. It's like the city is founded on displacement and dispossession of people from their land, starting with the Coast Salish folk. So I think part of it is like having that conversation too about, what we're seeing today, I think is a part of that legacy. It just, it looks different or comes in different form, but it's like the same dynamics that people are being pushed out and their power being dispersed. But also the response to that, I think, is a really beautiful part of our history. And so, I see that, continuing through Africatown and Got Green and a lot of really incredible groups and artists. And so I think there's like a lot of potential there, and that's kind of the thing that keeps me excited and inspired and wanting to, keep pushing forward.
Oh, girlfriend, you just said it. Because you and me both. I mean, literally you and me both. And that's why I think there's some fuel we get from each other, right? And just seeing the growth of the movement, and other organizations coming in, individuals, community members, leaders, thought, change makers, all. For me, I'm like, yes, because it's going to take the work of all of us in order to change these dynamics that we're seeing happen in our city. I just wanted to end with, you gave us a great anecdotal story about the first spot that, really inspired you. I would love to hear from you. Maybe another iconic space that you felt you guys were able to cover. You went there and you experienced something. I know we went to Busch Gardens, and I'll tell you,
I talk about Busch Gardens.
I immediately was thinking of that, but you probably have your own story, and I wanted to hear from you. After doing this work now for going into your 4th year, give us another, like, this space. It was amazing. Sad it's gone, but. Maybe one of your favorites.
Yeah. Well, maybe I won't talk about Busch Gardens this time. I talk about them a lot, and there's, an active campaign to save Busch Garden. But I think one thing that's been really striking is one thing out of many is that, Seattle kind of prides itself as being a music city. And yet we've seen all of these music venues, vanish or are under threat of redevelopment. And I'm not even talking about the Showbox.
Right.
Like, just in the past couple of years, it's like Funhouse in El Corazon, Rebar is up for sale. The Crocodile is not protected. There's all these places that we think of as being very iconically Seattle that people almost assume is protected, because how could it not be?
Yeah.
But or like Highway 99 Blues Club.
Yeah.
Because you and I both have a connection.
Yes.
There. It was just kind of a super cool, magical, like, underground space that was under the viaduct. I feel like there's like a lot of cool stuff that was under the viaduct, maybe because that's what happens when you're in, like, its shadow and it's not maybe a desirable place, but it's not hot property like it is now, like the gold rush happening now that the viaduct is gone.
Yeah.
And it's like the cool stuff that blossoms in these, like, shadows, or the places that are kind of more gritty. Yeah. Kind of like that old Seattle vibe. And, like, we've been to shows there. There's incredible bands, blues, Zydeco, jazz, rockabilly, just, and it's a community of artists and musicians that play there. It's like, well, that's one less venue for them to play. You and I have seen some incredible shows, and it was definitely a community there, like a passion and a labor of love on the part of the owners. They closed New Year's Eve of 2018, so it's been just over a year, and I think that was a really cool place that was hard to lose, and there's just so many others besides that, but since I'm wearing the shirt.
Yeah, well, you say that, and it's so true. And I think that, when you talked about the music spaces just now, I see the Seattle Music Commission is doing a lot of work kind of around, well, how do we either create spaces or open up spaces for other acts to come in, because they have been shut out of specific spaces, and now that spaces are closing, there's this kind of squeeze that they're feeling. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think that the work they're doing now in response to that is vital as they move forward and try to think about, again, you said great things, so I'm gleaning off all the things you said today, because I love when you said, Seattle prides itself on being this way, but really when you break it down, it's actually, now it's this. So what are they doing about that? That's huge. Anything that we haven't covered today that you think that the community should know, or something that is burning with you, just let us know.
I would just say, like, feel free to reach out to me, slide in my DMs if you like. I'm just Vanishing Seattle on Instagram and Facebook, Twitter, which I don't really check as much, but that's Vanishing 206. But, like I said, I really see it as a community effort, and I just get so much, not just content, but just a lot of, just kind of like satisfaction and, encouragement from being able to, like, connect with, real folks out there in the world, and people from Seattle, like, sharing places that are important to them, places that they'd like me to cover. So, again, it's just me. It might take me a little while, but feel free to reach out, because I really do enjoy, connecting with folks.
That's amazing. This is my girl. I call her Cindy, bro. You may know her as Cynthia Brothers, but thank you so much again for coming on today. This has been so refreshing, and it's Community Corner's first episode of 2020.
Oh, hey.
So I am so thrilled that we were able to share this with Vanishing Seattle and Cynthia Brothers. I think the work you're doing and spotlighting these spaces, growing your viewers and everything has been phenomenal, and it's inspiring to me for sure. So thank you for coming on
Thank
today.
you so much for having me. I'm just really grateful and honored to be in this space. And you're just so good for my self-esteem. It's making me shine. So I appreciate you and all the work that you're doing too.
Absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. She knows what's up. So you guys be looking out for that event at Wa Na Wari. She said it's coming up on January 16th, 7 to 9 p.m. It sounds like it's going to be a phenomenal event. And as they start to roll out more and more of their films, be on the lookout for them. Support Vanishing Seattle. It's an important movement right here to make sure that we all are aware of spaces that are closing around us and what we can then do, like partnering with Africatown Community Land Trust. Feel free to, volunteer with us. You can check out our website, and you can also fill out your volunteer form right there so that you can be brought into the fold and actually be a part of the solutions to save these spaces or create new spaces for our culture to thrive. So thank you for tuning in today, checking in with us, staying in with us, watching the whole episode. We appreciate you guys. Feel free to leave comments below and let us know how Community Corner is supporting your community. Thanks again.